Joining me now, three of the best political analysts in the country. CNN contributor, Republican strategist Ed Rollins, Ed, formerly White House political director, recently the chairman of Mike Huckabee's presidential campaign, and CNN contributor, New York Daily News columnist, a member of the editorial board of the Daily News, Errol Lewis. He's also the host of the morning show on WWRL in New York City, where else? And CNN contributor, Democratic strategist Robert Zimmerman, National Democratic Committeeman, superdelegate. Good to have you all here.
Thank you.
So how's it going for your candidate in the Middle East? He only has 3 network anchors, 300 press in tow, and he's managing every inch of the news all of the way. I mean,
and John McCain,
how did you manage this?
I can't take credit for this, but of course the way John McCain's reacting to Barack Obama's trip, you can tell it's been a great week for Barack Obama.
Do you think?
I would think. I saw George Bush Sr. and John McCain standing there in Maine doing a political rendition of Grumpy Old Men.
Ooh,
I think that it was
ageism from a Democrat.
No, not
how
ageism.
Unseemly.
Not just political commentary.
My gosh, what's next?
Well, we're just going to talk about the issues.
That's terrible. Errol, your thoughts?
We're getting down to the wire.
Robert's sitting there thinking to himself, when did Dobbs become politically correct?
I mean, look, we're coming down to the wire. There are 104 days to Election Day. Every news cycle is critical. Obama strung together 4, 5, 6 of them in a row, and that's not a small thing. He closed, he answered questions about his stature. He looked presidential. He
started to say he closed the questions. I like that.
Well, I mean,
that's quite a few days.
He closed the gap.
3 days in the Middle East.
He closed the stature gap, is what I was going to say on foreign policy. He really did. I mean, if anybody had any lingering doubts, now understand that not everybody in the country is watching this. A lot of people are on vacation and so forth, but.
Well, they are when they're watching. I mean, Lou Dobbs tonight. Everybody's watching Lou Dobbs tonight.
He did what he wanted to do. He did what he needed to do, and he had a lot of help and he had a lot of luck.
All right.
Well, the luck and probably the most important thing he did all week was that 40-foot shot for that 3-pointer when he was playing basketball.
Yeah,
that was something pretty significant.
That was leadership.
You know, I think he's...
Just ask the Knicks.
I think symbolically he's had a great week. Whether the substance is there or not, we still have to wait and see. The critical thing, I think, is that John McCain had a terrible week. John McCain should have disappeared this week and not tried to compete. And if he thinks his campaign is going to be, I was there first, I was right, he was wrong, that's not going to work. It's people don't want to be talking about the past, they want to be talking about the future. How do we move forward? How do we deal with a very significant problem in Afghanistan? How do we get our troops out, whatever the timetable might be, and how do we lead this country out of an economic crisis that's far more severe to most Americans today than the war?
You see, Ed's point is absolutely on target, because this is a situation...
Well, I thought you might say so.
Well, because both parties are wrong. Democrats can't make this campaign about you were wrong about Iraq, and John McCain can't make the case you were wrong about the surge. The issue is, how do we move forward? And the best strategy to remove our troops from Iraq and refocus on fighting terrorism. That's got to be the objective.
I feel like I'm falling down some sort of Orwellian crevice here. What I'm hearing Obama say right now, Errol, is basically what the Bush administration has been saying. We'll open up those discussions based on the conditions on the ground, and we'll listen to the commanders, never allow them to dictate. I cannot find a fraction's difference between the Bush strategy, or lack of it, and the Obama strategy, or lack of it.
Well, that's right. There's not only are they starting to converge, but this interesting new force has popped up, which is called the government of Iraq. And Maliki, who is also running for re-election, and as McCain found
a doubly dangerous situation, too.
Very much so. He found out, much to his chagrin, that it's in Maliki's best interest, or so he believes, to distance himself a little bit and sort of stand up to the Bush administration and sort of embrace Obama a little bit, or at least the notion of withdrawal. That's how he's going to try and get reelected. And it's not something anybody really thought was going to happen. And yet, this is what everyone said that they wanted: an independent, sovereign government in Iraq.
Yeah, and by the way, I say, 3 cheers. But what's confounding as well, in this sort of Orwellian crevice in which we find ourselves now, Obama is saying the surge strategy didn't work in Iraq, but he wants a surge strategy in Afghanistan, i.e. more troops. What in the world? And the national media doesn't even look at this as the...
Before we put more troops into Afghanistan, which obviously...
Wait, before we go to the substance of that, I'd just like to understand what the heck's going on in the conflict between the two approaches.
Well, well, first of all, there is no approach yet to Afghanistan. Afghanistan was the tough battle that we basically didn't have sufficient troops to go there. We asked NATO to go in there. NATO has failed miserably. And they're now basically, no one's talking about more NATO troops coming in. They're talking about 20,000 more American troops going in there. This is very tough sledding. And the lessons of Afghanistan are the lessons the Russians found out a long time ago. That this is a very tough group. They're getting enabled by the activity in Iraq, and I think long term, before we go there and make a commitment of lots and lots of men for a long period of time, we better have a very serious discussion of whether the American public wants that.
Well, good grief, we can't get a serious discussion. We got one man. Obama says he wants the surge doesn't work in Iraq, yet it obviously has, and he wants a surge in Afghanistan.
There's not going to be any discussion in this course of this campaign about, and equally as important, the decision is not going to be made until there's a new president and a new Congress. And I think at that point in time, the American public has to understand this is a long-term, drawn-out battle. And if we think we've done with Iraq, all we have to do is get into Afghanistan and very quickly.
So what is this election going to be decided upon then? Help me out here.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to dominate. This election is going to be decided by independents who at the end of the day are going to basically decide that Obama meets the test or doesn't meet the test, unless John McCain can somehow put forward a campaign that basically articulates his vision, and so far that's not occurred.
The strategy simply is that, and Obama took major steps this week to do it, is to try to neutralize this experience issue in foreign affairs.
In 3 days?
In 4 days, and the visuals were...
4 days.
And the visuals were
Look,
great.
if my colleagues in the national media are dumb enough and craven enough to stamp some imprimatur on this man for 4 days in the Middle East, then, I mean, we might as well just throw our hands up and turn over the keys to whoever wants
Well,
it.
it's really, even though your colleagues may think it's up to them, it's really not going to be up to them. It's going to be up...
Who's going to give him that imprimatur?
The American people will, if they choose to on Election Day. And I think what's most intriguing to watch is the fact that ultimately this is an economy-based...
What would you think of the American people if on basis of 4 days in the Middle East they decide the man is obviously stamped and sealed as ready to take on the Middle East?
No, that's not the way. You know how that's not going to work that way.
Well, I don't know how it is going to work.
They're going to see a man who actually showed he looked presidential. He conducted himself in a dignified, proper fashion, and he articulated a vision for the future in foreign policy.
Lord.
And that's what it's going to be about. Whose vision of the future?
Does McCain look presidential?
Well, not the way he's conducted himself this week. And what is his vision for the future? I mean, you talk about an Orwellian issue. John McCain, who supported the surge in Iraq, opposed the surge in Afghanistan, and now he supports the Obama position of increasing troops in Afghanistan.
Lou, looks count for something.
You have got to be kidding me.
I'm actually on the level.
Kidding.
And those are the facts.
I'm not even going to respond. Those are the facts?
Yeah, John McCain opposed increasing troops in Afghanistan. Obama advocated it. Now he's on board in that position.
I wanted to say, Lou, as Ed taught the nation a generation ago with Ronald Reagan, how you look does count. It can translate into political capital. So it's not, I don't think it's something to be poo-pooed. On the other hand, you know, proper journalism, we should ask those 300 foreign policy advisors who are with him what they think about the notion of charging into Afghanistan, the graveyard of empires that has brought one major power after another to its knees.
This is somebody else's issue. The fact is that here is the so-called candidate who would end U.S. involvement in Iraq rather arbitrarily and send troops into Afghanistan pursuing what? I don't know. How you reconcile anything here is beyond me. But that, of course, is the purview of the national press, or excuse me, the American people.
You taught me that.
Robert, thank you very much. Errol, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, America's middle class. Guess who's bearing the brunt of this economic slowdown? What, if anything, is Congress doing about it? What is the president doing about it? Don't bother asking that last one. We'll have a report for you next. Stay with us.